An unexpected reunion. The morning sun painted the white buildings of Santorini in shades of gold as Victoria Sterling stood on her hotel balcony, watching the Aegean Sea shimmer below. After months of saving every penny from her artwork sales, she had finally managed this dream vacation for her 7-year-old twins. The resort was far beyond her usual means, but she had found a flash sale and used her credit card, promising herself she would find a way to pay it off later. Oliver and Noah were still sleeping in the adjoining room, their peaceful faces a reminder of why every sacrifice was worth it. They had been so excited when she told them about Greece, their eyes lighting up with wonder at the pictures of blue-domed churches and crystal-clear waters. As a single mother and struggling artist in Brooklyn, Victoria had built a quiet life around her boys. They had never asked about their father, but she knew those questions would come eventually. How could she explain that their father had vanished the moment success called his name, leaving her pregnant and alone, without even knowing it? After waking the twins, Victoria took them to the elegant breakfast terrace overlooking the volcanic landscape. She had chosen a quiet corner table, hoping to avoid curious stares that sometimes followed when people noticed she was traveling alone with children. The boys chattered excitedly about their plans for the day, their voices carrying the pure joy that only children possessed. 3 floors above, Damian Cross was already dressed in his signature black suit despite the early hour. At 32, he had everything most men dreamed of: a billion-dollar tech empire, houses on 3 continents, an influence that reached the highest levels of industry. Yet lately, he found himself thinking about the roads not taken, the choices that had led him to this pinnacle of success but left him emotionally hollow. This business retreat was supposed to finalize a merger that would expand his empire across Europe. But something about this place, with its ancient beauty and timeless rhythm, made the corporate world feel distant and unimportant. For once, he decided to take his breakfast on the main terrace instead of his private dining room, drawn by an inexplicable urge to be among people rather than isolated in luxury. He was reviewing documents on his tablet when a burst of childish laughter made him look up. 2 boys were giggling at something their mother had whispered, their faces animated with delight. Something about their profiles, the way they tilted their heads when they laughed, sent a chill through him that had nothing to do with the morning breeze. Victoria was helping Noah cut his pancakes when she felt eyes on her. She glanced up casually, expecting to see another guest admiring the view, but instead found herself staring into a face that haunted her dreams and nightmares in equal measure. The coffee cup slipped from her fingers, shattering against the marble floor with a sound that seemed to echo across the entire terrace. After 8 years, there he was, as handsome as ever, but with something different in his eyes. The boyish softness was gone, replaced by sharp angles and lines that spoke of sleepless nights and ruthless decisions. The silence stretched between them across the terrace, heavy with unspoken words and buried emotions. Other guests turned to look at the broken cup, but Victoria barely noticed. Her entire world had narrowed to the man standing frozen 20 feet away, the man who had promised to call and never did. Oliver and Noah looked between their mother and the stranger with growing confusion. They had never seen their mother look so pale, so shaken. Oliver, ever protective, reached for Victoria's hand while Noah stared openly at the tall man in the expensive suit. "Mommy, are you okay?" Oliver whispered, his small voice cutting through Victoria's shock. She forced herself to breathe, to remember that her children were watching. Whatever this encounter meant, whatever pain it might reopen, her boys came first. They always came first. "Fine, sweetheart," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt, just a little clumsy with my coffee. But Damian was moving now, crossing the terrace with determined strides. Other guests parted before him unconsciously, sensing the intensity radiating from his tall frame. Victoria wanted to run, to grab her children and disappear, but her legs felt rooted to the spot. When he reached their table, her name fell from his lips like a prayer and a curse combined. Victoria. Part 2. Painful recognition. Victoria stood slowly, instinctively positioning herself between Damian and the twins. Up close, she could see the changes 8 years had wrought in his face. But his eyes, Those dark eyes that had once made her believe in forever remained unchanged. "Damian," she said, her voice carefully controlled, "what are you doing here?" "Business retreat," he replied, though the words felt meaningless in the face of this impossible coincidence. His gaze moved to the children, and Victoria saw the exact moment when the resemblance hit him fully. The color that had returned to his face drained away again. Noah, never one to be ignored, piped up with characteristic boldness. "Are you a friend of our mom's? You look important, like the people on TV." The innocent question hung in the air like a challenge. Victoria's heart hammered against her ribs as she waited for Damian's response. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that the stranger might be his father? Damian knelt slowly to Noah's eye level, his movement careful and deliberate. "I'm an old friend of your mother's," he said, his voice gentler than Victoria remembered it could be. "What's your name?" "I'm Noah, and this is my brother Oliver. We're twins, but we're not identical because I'm braver and he's smarter." Noah's easy confidence made Victoria's chest tighten with pride and terror in equal measure. Oliver stepped closer to his mother, his cautious nature keeping him watchful. "How old of a friend?" he asked, his question sharper than his years should have allowed. Victoria saw Damian swallow hard at the question. She could practically see him doing the math, counting backwards from the boy's apparent age to that summer, 8 years ago, when their world had exploded with passion and possibility before reality tore them apart. "We knew each other before you were born," Damian answered carefully, his eyes never leaving the children's faces. Victoria could see him cataloging every feature, every gesture, looking for confirmation of what his heart already knew. "Boys, why don't you finish your breakfast?" Victoria said, her voice carrying a note of finality that both children recognized. They had learned to read their mother's moods, to understand when adult conversations were approaching that required their absence. Oliver nodded and guided his brother back to their seats, but Victoria could feel their curious gazes burning between her and Damian. She had always been honest with them, but how could she be honest about this? Damian straightened. Slowly, his impressive height suddenly feeling oppressive in the morning sunlight. "We need to talk," he said quietly, his words meant for her alone. "No," Victoria replied immediately, her protective instincts flaring. "We don't need anything. My sons and I are here for a vacation, nothing more." But even as she spoke the words, she could see the determination building in Damian's expression. This was the face that had conquered boardrooms and built an empire from nothing. This was the man who never backed down from a challenge. "Victoria, please," he said, and she heard echoes of the young man she had once loved in his voice. "Just give me 5 minutes. Just let me explain." Around them, the breakfast terrace continued its elegant dance of morning service. But for Victoria, the world had narrowed to this moment, this choice that would determine whether the peaceful life she had built for her children would survive intact. She looked at Oliver and Noah, saw them trying to pretend they weren't listening while hanging on every word. They deserved better than a scene, better than having their vacation destroyed by adult drama they couldn't understand. "Not here," she said finally, her decision made, not in front of them. Damian nodded, relief flickering across his features. "Tonight, after they're asleep. The beach below the resort by the old lighthouse?" "Please, Victoria, I need to know." She wanted to refuse, wanted to pack her bags and flee to some other corner of the world where the past couldn't find them. But she had learned over the years that running only delayed the inevitable. Some conversations had to be had, some truths had to be faced, no matter how much they might hurt. 11 o'clock, she said quietly. "But this doesn't change anything. Damian, my sons don't need a father who appears and disappears like morning mist." As she spoke the words, she saw him flinch, as if she had struck him. Good, she thought, with satisfaction tinged by old pain. Let him feel a fraction of what she had endured when he vanished without explanation. The morning sun climbed higher over Santorini, painting the white buildings in shades of gold and rose. But for Victoria Sterling and Damian Cross, the beautiful, day felt like the calm before a storm that would either destroy what remained of their past or force them to finally confront the future they had never dared to imagine. A day of revelation. Victoria spent the morning in a daze, going through the motions of vacation while her mind spun with memories and fears. She took Oliver and Noah to the famous infinity pool, watched them splash and laugh in the azure water, but part of her remained frozen in that moment on the breakfast terrace. When her carefully constructed world had tilted off its axis, the twins seemed to sense her distraction. Oliver kept glancing at her with worried eyes, while Noah peppered her with questions about the important man they had met. Victoria deflected as best she could, but she knew her children were too perceptive to be fooled for long. "Mom, why did that man make you drop your coffee?" Oliver asked, as they lounged on cushioned chairs beside the pool. His question was quiet, thoughtful in the way that always made Victoria's heart ache with pride and protectiveness. "Sometimes grown-ups get surprised when they see old friends," she said carefully, smoothing sunscreen across his shoulders. "Nothing for you to worry about, sweetheart." But Noah, never content with simple answers, sat up straighter. He looked like he wanted to talk to us more. "Are we going to see him again?" The innocent question hit Victoria like a physical blow. How could she explain that? Yes, they might see him again, and that he might want to be part of their lives in ways that could change everything. 3 floors above, Damian stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his suite, his phone buzzing incessantly with calls from his assistant. The merger talks that had brought him to Santorini seemed utterly meaningless now. Corporate maneuvers that paled in comparison to the earth-shattering possibility that he was a father. He had spent the day researching everything he could find about Victoria's life since he had left. Her social media presence was minimal, but he found traces of her artwork. Small gallery showings in Brooklyn, a few online sales. She had built a quiet life as a single mother and struggling artist, far removed from the glittering world of wealth and power he inhabited. The more he learned, the more his guilt deepened. While he had been conquering markets and accumulating wealth, she had been raising 2 children alone. Children who looked exactly like him at that age, with their golden brown hair and bright green eyes that seemed to see everything. His assistant had knocked on his door twice, each time more frantic, about the calls from board members and investors. But Damian couldn't bring himself to care about quarterly projections and market analysis. For the first time in his adult life, business felt like a pale substitute for something real and vital. As the afternoon sun began to slant toward evening, Victoria made a decision that surprised even herself. She approached the resort's concierge, an elegant woman named Helena, who spoke perfect English with a musical Greek accent. "I need someone to watch my children tonight," Victoria said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Just for a few hours. It's very well behaved, but I have something important to discuss with someone." Lena's eyes brightened with understanding. The resort offered babysitting services for guests, and she quickly arranged for Maria, a local grandmother who specialized in caring for visiting children. Victoria felt a pang of anxiety at leaving the twins with a stranger, but she knew this conversation with Damian couldn't happen with little ears nearby. When she returned to their room, she found Oliver and Noah building an elaborate castle. From the resort's plush pillows and blankets, their laughter filled the space, and for a moment, Victoria allowed herself to imagine that nothing had changed, that they could continue their vacation in blissful ignorance of the complications that lurked just beyond their perfect bubble. Dinner was a struggle. Victoria picked at her food while the twins chattered about their day, their excitement about the evening's activities and their plans for tomorrow. They had no idea that their world might be fundamentally different by morning, that the man they had met at breakfast might claim a role in their lives that would change everything. Oliver, always sensitive to his mother's moods, reached across the table to pat her hand. "Are you feeling sick, Mom? You look worried." Victoria forced a smile, covering his small hand with hers. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just thinking about grown-up things that aren't very interesting." Noah, meanwhile, was scanning the restaurant with obvious hope. "You think we'll see that important man again?" "I liked him. He seems sad, though. Maybe he needs friends." The innocent observation pierced Victoria's heart. Even at 7, Noah had picked up on something in Damian's demeanor, some loneliness that transcended his wealth and success. It was a reminder that the man she had once loved might still exist beneath the polished exterior of the billionaire CEO. After dinner, Maria arrived to watch the twins. She was exactly as Helena had promised, a warm grandmother with twinkling eyes and infinite patience.
"Oliver and Noah."
took to her immediately, especially when she produced a bag of traditional Greek sweets and began teaching them simple words. In her native language, Victoria kissed them both goodnight, her heart heavy with the knowledge that this might be the last evening of their uncomplicated happiness. Whatever happened on the beach tonight, whatever truths emerged from her confrontation, with Damian, nothing would ever be quite the same again. Truth unveiled, the old lighthouse sat on a rocky promontory below the resort, accessible by a winding path that had been carved into the cliff face centuries ago. Victoria arrived first, her sandals crunching on the pebbled beach as she walked toward the weathered stone structure. The moon was nearly full, painting the Aegean in silver and casting long shadows across the sand. She had changed into a simple white dress, something that made her feel strong and confident despite the chaos in her heart. The evening air was warm and fragrant with the scent of wild herbs that grew along the cliff sides. But Victoria barely noticed the beauty around her. Her entire focus was on the conversation ahead, on the words that needed to be spoken after 8 years of silence. Damian appeared exactly at 11, a tall figure materializing from the shadows like something from a dream he had abandoned. His business suit for dark jeans and a white shirt, the casual clothes making him look younger, more like the man she had once known and loved. They stood facing each other across the moonlit beach, the gentle lapping of waves the only sound between them. Victoria could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides as if he were fighting for control. "Thank you for coming," he said finally, his voice carrying clearly across the small distance between them. Victoria wrapped her arms around herself as much for emotional protection as against the evening breeze. "You said you needed to know. Know what exactly?" Damian took a step closer, his dark eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Are they mine? Victoria, Oliver, and Noah? Are they my sons?" The question hung between them like a challenge thrown down on ancient ground. Victoria had imagined this moment countless times over the years, had rehearsed different responses, different ways of protecting herself and her children. But now, faced with his direct gaze and the raw need in his voice, she found that only the truth would serve. "Yes," she said simply, the word carrying 8 years of pain and struggle and fierce maternal love. "They're your sons." Damian's knees nearly buckled at the confirmation. He had known, of course, from the moment he saw them, but hearing the words spoken aloud made it real in a way that observation never could. He was a father, had been a father for 7 years without knowing it. "Why didn't you tell me?" The question came out harsh, almost accusatory, and Victoria's spine stiffened with old anger. "Tell you what exactly?" she shot back, her voice rising with emotion she had kept buried for too long. "Tell your voicemail. Tell your assistant who said you were unavailable. Tell the empty apartment you never came back to." The words hit Damian like physical blows, each one a reminder of how completely he had failed her when it mattered most. He remembered those weeks after he left for what was supposed to be a short business trip, how the opportunity had expanded and evolved, how he had gotten caught up in the intoxicating rush of success and let days turn into weeks without calling. "I tried to reach you," he said weakly, knowing even as he spoke that it wasn't enough. "You tried twice," Victoria said, her voice bitter with old hurt. "2 phone calls in 8 years, Damian. 2 calls where you talked about how busy you were, how this deal was going to change everything, how you would call back soon, and then nothing. Radio silence while I discovered I was pregnant and gave birth and raised 2 children who ask me every Christmas why Santa doesn't bring them a daddy." The image of his sons asking for a father for Christmas hit Damian harder than any business loss or professional failure ever had. He thought of all the bedtime stories he had never read, all the scraped knees he had never kissed, all the proud moments he had missed while building an empire that suddenly felt hollow and meaningless. "I didn't know," he whispered, the words inadequate but all he had to offer. "Victoria, I swear to you, if I had known about them, I would have come back. I would have done anything," she laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Would you? Would you really have given up your precious merger, your big break, your chance to build the business empire you dreamed about? Because that's what it would have taken, Damian. Not grand gestures or occasional visits, but the daily, grinding, beautiful work of being a parent." The accusation stung, because it carried the weight of truth. The young man he had been 8 years ago had been ambitious, to the point of ruthlessness, willing to sacrifice anything for success. But standing here on this moonlit beach, facing the woman he had loved and lost, he realized that success without meaning was just another form of failure. "You're right," he said quietly, the admission torn from somewhere deep in his chest. "I was selfish. I was so focused on building something that I forgot what was truly important. But I'm not that man anymore, Victoria. I want to be better. I want to be the father they deserve." Victoria studied his face in the moonlight, searching for any trace of the careless young man who had broken her heart. What she saw instead was genuine remorse, a vulnerability that his wealth and power couldn't mask. "It's not that simple," she said finally, her voice softer now, but still cautious. "You can't just appear in their lives and expect everything to be perfect. They don't even know you're their father." "Then tell them," Damian said, taking another step closer. "Please, Victoria. Give me a chance to know them, to be part of their lives. I know I don't deserve it, but they do. They deserve to have a father who will be there for them." The plea in his voice broke something inside Victoria's carefully constructed walls. She had spent 8 years protecting her children from the pain of abandonment, but perhaps it was time to consider that. They might be strong enough to handle the truth. A new beginning the next morning brought a new kind of anxiety for Victoria. She'd agreed to give Damian a chance, but only if it was what Oliver and Noah wanted. The decision had to be theirs, without pressure or manipulation from either adult. She found the twins at their usual spot by the pool, building an elaborate story around the toy boats they had bought in the resort gift shop. For a moment, she simply watched them play, marveling at their innocence and resilience. The children she had raised, strong and curious and full of life. "Boys, I need to talk to you about something important," she said, settling onto the cushioned chair beside them. Oliver looked up immediately, his perceptive green eyes searching her face. "Is it about the man from yesterday? The one who made you drop your coffee?" Victoria nodded, her heart racing. "Yes, it's about him. His name is Damian, and he's someone I knew a long time ago, before you were born, like before we were even tiny babies," Noah asked, his natural curiosity overcoming any sense of caution. "Before that," Victoria said gently, "we were friends, very close friends, and then life took us in different directions. But seeing him again made me realize that you deserve to know the truth about something." She took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "Damian is your father." The words hung in the air between them, and Victoria watched as the information processed in their young minds. Oliver's eyes widened with something that might have been understanding, while Noah's face lit up with immediate excitement. "Oh, you mean the important man is our dad?" Noah asked, bouncing slightly on his chair. "Does that mean we can see him again?" "If you want to," Victoria said carefully. "But you need to understand that this is complicated. He didn't know about you before yesterday, and I was very hurt when he went away. I'm not sure if we can all be a family in the way you might hope." Oliver, ever the thoughtful one, reached for his mother's hand. "Are you still sad about it, Mom?" The question brought tears to Victoria's eyes. "A little bit, sweetheart. But I'm not as sad as I was before. I want you to know that whatever happens, nothing will change how much I love you both." "Can we see him today?" Noah asked, his enthusiasm bubbling over. "I want to ask him questions about being important and why he looks so serious all the time." Victoria smiled despite her nerves. "Yes, we can see him. But remember, this is all very new for him too. He's probably just as nervous as we are." Later that afternoon, they arranged to meet at the resort's beautiful terrace garden. Damian arrived first, looking more nervous than Victoria had ever seen him. He had traded his expensive suit for simple khaki pants and a polo shirt, clearly trying to appear more approachable. When the twins appeared with Victoria, his face lit up with a combination of joy and terror. Yes, this was it. The moment that would determine whether he could truly be part of their lives. "Hi, Mr. Damian," Noah said brightly, immediately launching into conversation. "Mom told us you're our dad. That's really cool. Are you really as important as you look?" Damian knelt down to their level, his voice gentle but emotion-filled. "I'm your father, yes. I'm very, very happy to meet you properly. Both of you. Why didn't you come see us before? Oliver asked, his question direct but not accusatory. Because I didn't know about you, Damian said honestly. Your mother and I lost touch with each other, and I missed out on watching you grow up. Can't change that. But I'd like to be part of your life now, if you want me to be. The conversation continued for hours, with the twins asking endless questions about his work, his travels, and his life. Damian answered each one with patience and honesty, and Victoria found herself seeing glimpses of the man she had once loved. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Noah made an announcement that surprised everyone. I think we should all go back to America together, he said with the confidence of someone who had just solved a complex problem. Then we can be a real family. Victoria felt her heart skip a beat. Sweetheart, it's not that simple. We have our life in Brooklyn, and Damian has his work to think about. Actually, Damian said quietly, his eyes meeting Victoria's, I've been thinking about making some changes. My assistant can handle the European expansion, and I could easily set up a New York office. If you'd let me be part of your lives, I'd like to try being the father they deserve. The weeks that followed were a careful dance of building trust and creating new routines. Damian moved to New York, not pushing for more than Victoria was ready to give, but consistently showing up for the twins in ways that mattered. He attended their school events, helped with homework, and slowly began to build the relationship he had missed. Victoria watched this transformation with a mixture of wonder and careful optimism. This was not the same man who had left 8 years ago. This was someone who had learned that true success couldn't be measured in profit margins and market share. The day Oliver and Noah officially asked if they could call him Dad was the day Damian knew he had found his way back to what mattered most. And when Victoria finally agreed to let him take them to their first baseball game, she saw how the missing pieces of their family puzzle had finally found their place. 6 months later, on a quiet Sunday morning, in their new home in Brooklyn, where Damian had bought a house 3 blocks from Victoria's apartment, the twins were playing in the backyard while their parents watched from the kitchen window. You think we're going to be okay? Victoria asked, her hand finding his. Damian looked at his sons, at the woman who had given him the greatest gift of his life, and realized that all the success in the world couldn't compare to this moment. I think we're going to be better than okay, he said softly. I think we're going to be exactly what we were always meant to be. And as Oliver and Noah's laughter filled the air, Victoria finally believed that some second chances were worth the leap of faith required to embrace them. The end.